Good morning, horse husbandry. Hopefully you're catching this video. Um, it's January 21st, 2021, the day after our new president was sworn in and elected. Well, elected and then sworn in yesterday. Hopefully it'll bring a good year, and pretty soon COVID hopefully will be over. Anyway, I wanted to run through a couple things on the old equine, our wonderful horse. If you look here, this is equine in terms of their scientific classification. And kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species is the normal scientific classification order. Then obviously you can see on the side, so you see kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, species here. This down here is just other species that fall into the same genus. We're going to focus on the species Caballus, which is the true light horse. So you can see kingdom of the horse is Animalia, phylum of the horse is Chordata, class of the horse is Mammalia, order of the horse is Periodactyla, family is Equidae, genus is Equus, and species is Caballus. If you're interested in Shalaski's horse, donkeys, zebras, whatever, I have listed their species down here. They fall in all the same categories down to species. Make sure that you put a note of this at some point. I will ask you to remember this on a quiz or something along those lines. Evolution of the horse. Just thought we could take a minute and run through the evolution of the horse. Obviously, the very first ancestors that they have fossil records of are Eohippus. It was very small, had several toes, and it would run quickly. And so it was small and roamed around. So the Mesohippus, then about 35 million years ago, which is a whole long time, and based on carbon dating and the bones from these old critters, they try to determine the evolutionary process. Obviously, this critter had 3 toes on the front, was better suited for running. They're getting a little faster, a little quicker. Obviously, those slow critters were easy for prey to take out, so they began to get quicker. The Merychippus, 20 million years ago, so we've gained 15 million years. They were about 35 inches tall, so somewhere around 3 feet. They lived in herds, and they chewed on rough grass, so they were already starting to develop that digestive tract for grasses and forages. Phyllohippus was probably about 5 million years ago. Their center toe of Merychippus developed as a dominant one. The other toes regressed. We can now see those as splint bones when we look at the cannon bone of a horse. We can see the remnants of those other toes that used to be that have now regressed, and there's one dominant toe. Then those became our horse species. Now in the Western Hemisphere, for the most part, these critters all went extinct. And it wasn't until the Spanish came that they brought more horses back to this part of the country. If you track this evolutionary process, and it does a pretty good job in the book, if you have the book, chapter 1 spends quite a bit of time on tracking this. This is not a linear process, so it kind of bounced around. They gained ground, they lost ground. So you have this branch off of the evolutionary chain. It didn't work, and so it ended up going extinct. And then this branch and this branch, and so it took a while for a dominant branch to develop into the horse. And that happened sometime 8 million years ago or so. The rate of evolution really depended on the environment that those critters were in And we see vast differences in the horse based on the environment that that horse was in. So in some environments where feed was low to the ground, those smaller animals then survived and did a better job, and we ended up with some of the ponies or the really small horses. In areas where they had to browse from trees and tree branches and only those taller ones could reach them, evolution started making that horse taller, because the short ones would starve to death or get eaten by predators because they were the unhealthy ones. So we see evolution then start to change these horses once they got into their current state. Now, for thousands and thousands of years, the Cro-Magnon man was the ones that used the horses, and they just used them for food. It wasn't for about 500,000 years before we started doing anything else with the horse other than food. And so this food source was very important to them, and the horse main purpose was for food. Now, as we started domesticating them, somewhere around 3000 BC, which is still a bit before my time, but we started domesticating them. We started having them work in place of the oxen. They were so much faster and more agile, and they could do the work in a quarter of the time of the oxen. Horses slowly started replacing them. 2,000 years or so goes by, and we decide that, wow, we should start riding them. We started riding horses and training them and doing those kind of things, and sure enough, then the horse becomes a major source of transportation. The armies then adopted them, and all of the armies that had horses were more powerful, quicker, more agile than any of just the ground troops, and they then became quite dominant. And so more and more started to develop it with the horses. Then obviously, as things changed and our Spanish conquistadors, which came to America with horses, we started seeing the horse again because we realized it went extinct in North America. We started seeing the horses influx back into the United States. And this was a good thing. Somewhere around obviously, when they first came over, they brought some horses, but it wasn't until the 1500s, really, that horses started being used in these new American colonies. There is a site in 1547 where there was a shipment of 1,500 horses that were brought to these new Spanish colonies in America. Now, for the first little while, the Spanish colonies would not let anybody else use their horses. This slowly started to change as they started to breed and get more horses in America. And we started seeing that happen. And by the 1800s, the horse was the center of most populations. It was used for transportation and draft, and it was the primary source for transportation. Farming, ranching, all revolved around the horses. There's a horse count somewhere around 1867 with a horse population somewhere around 8 million, which is quite a few considering, 367 years prior, there was basically no horses. And so the horse population grew quite rapidly in the United States. And if you look at that 8 million, that is a slightly less than what we have now. So the horse population grew. They were very, very important to our civilization. Now in North America, from the 1800s on, we have developed horses into lots of things, from exploration to war to commercial use, fire protection, transportation, agriculture, obviously. We still use them some in agriculture. We still use them for recreation and sport, and that's probably the primary source of use for us now is recreation and sport. There are still some farms and ranches that use horses for cattle gatherings and things like that. But for the most part, horses are a recreational and sport type critter, and Over the last several years, we've seen horse population slowly declining from where it would have been in the peak. Just for information purposes, this kind of gives you an idea of the top 7 countries with horses. The United States has about 9 million, 9.5 million, which is 16% of the world's population of horses. China has 7, Mexico has 6 million, Brazil has 5. You can kind of see how that drops. This makes up the vast majority of all horses around the world. The United States still is the most populated in terms of our horse production numbers. Now, some of that goes to some of our policies. We no longer have horse slaughter facilities, so we cannot process our old horses or lame or crippled or non-usable ones for anything. So those horses are just left in horse sanctuaries until they reach their end point. Horses are still being shipped to slaughter plants. We are just putting them on trucks and sending them to Mexico, or on boats and sending them to Japan. So we still are sending some out, but not at the level that we were when we had slaughter plants. So our number has not decreasing quite as quickly as maybe it could if we still allowed horses to be processed for some good, whether it be dog food or glue or even human food, which is where a lot of horses go. There are still countries that really like horse meat and will go out of their way to try and get it. Anyway, this gives you a little bit, tidbits of information for you to look at, focus on, and study. Remember, if you look at chapter 1 and 2, there is this information and a whole lot more about the history and development of our horse. Have a good day. I'll see you Tuesday.